Oh, what? What's with you, man? You haven't said anything for like 20 minutes. What the hell's your problem? Said Randall. Dante replied, "This life." Randall asked, "This life?" Dante said, "Why do I have this life?" Randall said, "Have some chips. You'll feel better." Recognize this movie's quote? Stay tuned to find out or check out the title of this episode of Talking Pictures Trivia.
Welcome to Talking Pictures Trivia, the podcast in which a group of geographically challenged friends explore movies through trivia as an excuse to keep their friendships alive. I'm one of these friends and today's host, Nick, and with me is... Additionally, joining us as guests this week are...
Ben.
And Tyler.
Thanks for joining us. Ben and Tyler host the Three Films and a podcast, which also consists of geographically challenged co-hosts exploring movies. You may remember Ben from our World of Apu, Shin Godzilla, and I Know What You Did Last Summer episodes. Tyler also joined us previously for Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Hey guys, do you still enjoy movies?
Conveniently, we do. Yeah.
Depends on the day.
For those joining us for the first time, we start off each episode with a movie quiz, as these pivotal questions will determine who earns today's trivia crown. In round one, each question is worth 1 point, and in round two, each question is worth 2 points. Then, once the fierce competition is over, we follow it up with our famous movie rant where anything goes. Tom, tell us about today's movie.
Today, we are continuing to explore movies that defined a director by going back to 1994 to visit Kevin Smith's first movie, Clerks. Kevin Smith is also known for Mallrats, Dogma, and Jersey Girl. Other movies in 1994 include Forrest Gump and Pulp Fiction, which we'll be exploring later this season, and another classic, Billy's Folly, which we have covered on this show earlier. Nick will be quizzing us today. Nick, what is Clerks all about?
To sum it up, you know what the real tragedy is? I'm not even supposed to be here today. For the audience, we happen to be recording on an atypical night, so I feel just as connected to this film at this moment as I did in the 90s. Tom, if you only had one word to describe Clerks, what would it be?
Responsibility. Ben?
Sundance. Tyler?
Nostalgic.
And my word would be indie.
It's time for question one.
And I will say, I reinforce the honor code with our locked-in policy here. So especially tonight, because I think some of these questions, if one person even gets a hint of it, they may get some other memories of what happened. So I'm going to trust this honor code here tonight. When you lock in, you're locked. So here we go.
Got my eye on you, Lawhorn.
Or you could just cheat. It's a lot easier.
No, don't cheat. It'll be much more fun.
Mm-hmm.
Question one. How many guys did Dante's girlfriend not sleep with?
Oh, locked in.
Locked in.
Oh, okay. I get it. I was confused by the phrasing.
That was my point.
Do we have to do the math?
So everyone's locked in, and I think it's going to be fun to start off with this, throwing this grenade to see how we can talk about this in a somewhat clean manner, but we'll see how it goes. Who was last to lock in?
Oh, it'd be me.
Okay, Tyler, start us out.
I put 3. I don't actually remember. And what sucks is I told myself to remember this because I knew this would be a question, and I still forgot. So, but I guess 3.
Ben?
36, not including Dante.
Tom?
This
is why the lock-in policy's there.
Yeah. The problem with the question is she satisfied 36 men. She slept with 3. I don't know what the overlap is between the people she slept with and the people she satisfied.
Yeah, so what's that Venn diagram look like?
Yeah, exactly.
Go with the knowledge we have from the movie.
I'm going to say 36, not 37, because Dante clearly was a bedded fellow. So 36.
Based on the information we have at our disposal, I'm going to say the answer is 36. I do understand there could have been some potential overlap.
Venn diagrams
Tyler,
are very
it was who
important
she
in this world.
didn't, not who she did.
Yeah. I was so confused by the phrasing. I was like, it has to be the more difficult one to remember. which
That's
would
why
have
I'm
been
here.
Yes.
This was
You
a very
son of a
deep
gun.
film, very deep.
Very deep.
right.
Well, to start this one off, the reason I went with this question is the style of humor, specifically the crude humor. When I think of this movie, that really jumps out at me. And at the time period when I was watching this in my life, the first time I should say, I was all about this. So I thought we should talk about it now. Has it aged differently? You know, where we feel about this.
I think it's interesting. I'm with you. The first time I saw it, I was like, oh, this is funny. I like all this, whatever. And then rewatching this, some of it was like, oh man, I didn't remember it being this much. I think back often. So like I got my degree in film. I had to do like a master's like project thing, and Tyler was involved with it. And we, wrote a script, we shot it, all this kind of stuff. And I showed it to my class, and like the hardest critique I got from someone is like, nobody is that witty all the time. And all I could think of was like, Clerks, Pulp Fiction stuff. Cause that's what I was trying to do. Like my professor literally said, don't have people sitting around a table at a diner. And that's exactly what I did. I was like, cool. If that's what you're telling us not to do, that's what I want to try. And I felt that way watching Clerks. It's like, man, nobody's this witty all the time. It's like, I think I understand what that person was like critiquing our film for, back in the day.
It finally connected, right?
Yeah. Oh, okay. I get it. Yeah. It's like, yeah. So I don't know. Like, yeah, some of the humor didn't work for me. Some of it was, you could tell, I think that Kevin Smith was writing for himself at certain points. It was like, I want to say this, I want to say that. And I think it's a lot like a debut album. Like you have your whole life to write your first album, then you have 2 years to write your next one. I feel like this is like Kevin Smith just had his whole life of jokes that he wanted to get out in Clerks, and he just threw all of it into the dialogue. And some of it works great, and some of it, I don't know how well it's aged or how necessary it was. But
Yeah, I mean, as far as how it aged, like I sort of look at it the same way I had conversations in my own life, right? Like that's why I chose the word nostalgic to describe the movie, because I used to work in a skateboard shop back when I was younger, and like we couldn't have cared less who was in the store and who wasn't in the store, whether we put stuff on TV that we shouldn't have put on there, like the conversations we were having, like nothing quite as crude or crass as this, but like certainly there was times when it was close, maybe even worse, who knows, and like so I just kind of like look at it. I wouldn't do that now. So the movie doesn't even age. It sort of is just like time stamped in my mind. Like there are some movies that don't get a pass like that from me. I can't think of an example right now, but there's times when I'm watching stuff like, ugh, that was rough. Like that shouldn't have ever been okay. But for whatever reason, for this movie, I feel like everything they talked about was just the same sort of conversations you might have with your friends, and they just happened to put it on camera. You know what I mean? Like for whatever reason, this movie got a pass for all the things that are problematic.
The specific scene that makes me think of a conversation I have with my friends, it actually was one of the less crude conversations, but it was the one about the Death Star and Star Wars and the independent contractors who were on there and got killed. Like that is some stupid conversation we would maybe even still have, but like that one was very relatable to me at that time. And even, recollecting now, or just like being nostalgic about some of the silly, diner conversations we would have had, that hits home.
Yeah, apparently it was going to be released NC-17, and they hired a big name lawyer. I think he actually represented OJ at one point. Alan Dershowitz.
Solid
That's
credentials.
it. Alan Dershowitz to push the MPAA to a rated R, so it could actually be released. Which is interesting because I remember as a kid seeing this. I think I saw this in the 8th grade, like around then, which is the time to see it, right? Because you're angry and horny and all those things. At least I was, and like I thought it was really funny and crude and liked the crudity. And now watching it, the crude stuff seems almost quaint. Like it seems like somebody's trying to upset me, which I usually end up finding very cute as opposed to upsetting, and that had more the feel. I will say there is, even with the crudity, a sort of feeling of I'll call it 90s 8th grade, which is speaking of Venn spaces, a very small Venn space for the people who were in 8th grade sometime in the 1990s, because it feels like that kind of post-grunge malaise, where people are trying to, and it's also 8th grade because people are trying to show each other up as to how like badass they're trying to be via just saying something vile or what have you. So that was kind of my relationship to the crude elements in the movie.
Yeah, I mean that's spot on. I think I was in 8th grade. When were we in 8th grade, Ben? I think it was like 1998.
96, I think, right? Aren't
Six
you're
something. Yeah, so it's like
I think it was 96, 97 for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
right. So that's I mean that's spot on. Like that's exactly what this dialogue is to me. It's just like people saying things for the sake of saying them, just for the sake of being shocking, right? Like to me, like Ben pointed out, it just felt like Kevin Smith is like, these are all the things that I want to say. These are conversations that my friends and I have, and I put together all this money and I'm going to make this movie, and I bought this film, like this is what we're doing. And it was just him trying to push some envelope somewhere.
No, I was gonna say I feel like there's so much but so little packed in everything Jay said. Like I think he got like the most offensive stuff, but just like in the least amount of time. Like he was just like like insults or offense per minute. I think Jay was killing it.
We call it the Jason Mewes ratio. Yeah.
I wonder what an 8th grader today would say if they watched this film, because it's a very different world now.
But they probably
Totally.
would like it, right?
Would they?
Like,
Would it
yeah, I think
transition
so.
like well, or
I
would they
think
be
so,
like, this
because
is
I mean,
dated?
there's a difference. Like nobody has phones, right? Nobody's talking about, like, these people would be talking about social media if it was made today, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, there's still the same idea of like in the, the thing about the 8th grade is you have like no control over your life. You really want to have sex. It's the first time in your life where, right around the first time in your life, like where that's something you're thinking about a lot.
Girls don't have cooties anymore, huh?
Yeah. And also like authority sucks. It's the first time we're like, no, I'm a person. I'm independent from authority. The people who are telling me what to do, I don't necessarily want to make them happy. Like the way you did
Right.
in elementary school. So subtract the social media stuff and the kind of social media dynamics, and I think people would identify with it.
The teenage angst remains, huh?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, it's punk rock, right? Like I think kids would still like it for the same reason they might still like, I don't know, Ben and I played in a Misfits tribute band a long time ago. So like a
Okay.
lot of the songs
Mhm.
we would play at our shows, like I think kids still gravitate to now just because it is that lo-fi punk rock. They say bad words and they do and say things you're not supposed to do. And it seems the way these characters act is what you think adults act like when you're a kid, right? Like this is what you think the cool adults are doing. And I also wanted to, when you talked about social media, it reminded me, I watched this on my phone. Like I couldn't get my computer to connect to the internet, so I had to use my phone to just watch off my cell service. And I just couldn't help but think like this is exactly how Randall or Dante would be spending their time at work, is watching this movie on their phone. So that was like a beautiful bit of poetry.
Yeah, they wouldn't. Kids today wouldn't understand the video store allure. Like when Randall goes into the video store and they're playing like the dramatic music and he falls down on his knees, like that I get entirely. I remember my video store.
Oh, yeah.
I could
Every
compare
Friday
it
night
to
was
other video
videos
stores.
for me.
Yeah. That kind of like sanctuary they wouldn't get. But having an equivalent online somewhere would be, and it's also interesting because these are people who, I think what's interesting about the movie is these are people who appeal to like 8th, 9th, 7th graders who really shouldn't be appealing to, people. They should have grown up by this point or start to do something. And that's the sort of stasis or paralysis of the movie, is the unfortunate. Looking cool to 8th graders is kind of unfortunate. It's kind of an unfortunate place to be in.
I don't know if I officially said who got any points, but Tom and Ben got 1 point each on that one. And we're going to move on to question 2.
It's time for question 2.
Dante's not even supposed to be here today. What does his girlfriend bring in to cheer him up?
Locked in.
Okay. I think, Ben, you're going to start us out.
The Garfield dish, lasagna.
Tyler?
Lasagna, baby.
Lasagna. Yep.
Okay, point. Everyone gets a point across the board there.
So
You know,
hungry
there's a
for
million
lasagna.
fine-looking women in the world, dude, but they don't all bring you lasagna at work. Silent Bob is one line. Well, technically, I think he also says the other ones just cheat on you or something like that. But the lasagna part was what mattered. What really matters is I want to talk about the characters. This film was made by Kevin Smith with maxing out his credit cards, using all of his
10
friends
of them
together.
10 credit cards.
Using, I think it was like 27 grand or something like that. And he just wanted to do what we all want to do. We want to get all our friends together and make a movie. And this man actually did it, and it got a giant following. I want to talk about the characters that he developed vis-a-vis his friends in this film.
I think it's pretty clear. It's in the trivia and stuff too, but it was clear that Kevin Smith was writing Randall for himself because he got I think the best jokes in there. But one of my favorite pieces of trivia out here is that he wasn't supposed to say that, not all girls bring you lasagna at work, but I guess Jay couldn't get through the line. And so it's the one thing we hear Silent Bob say. And it happens to be the most prophetic whatever of the whole movie. And I really enjoy that. That's one of my favorite things about the Askew universe is the Jay and Silent Bob aspect of it. I really enjoy those characters. And I feel like when you work these kind of jobs, you run into these kind of people, you make these friends, or you've dealt with these customers, things like that. So I love the characters that he built here because we got to, I feel like if you've worked any kind of retail job, you've met everybody that shows up in this movie.
I didn't know that he was truly supposed to be Silent Bob.
I didn't either until I read that, but I was like,
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. And I think it's cool. That's the one thing that he got to say, but
Mostly silent
watching,
Bob,
Tyler and I worked out at the airport for I don't know, almost 15 years, something. You just have these coworkers where it's you can just say the person's name to each other. It's oh my God, it's I can't stand this person. And that's the kind of thing you get with these characters. That Dante and Randall have this shorthand with each other where it's it may not be another coworker, but the kind of person that comes in, that mom that's what about these two movies? It's I don't know, I don't watch movies, lady. It's you just treat everybody like that. So I really enjoyed these characters. For me, they felt really full and just I understood them.
Totally. I was going to save this for the movie rant later, but I might as well just do it now. I didn't know that he wrote Randall for himself. I mean, you can tell, right? The whole time I'm watching the movie, I'm oh, he's Dante. Oh no, he's Randall. Oh no, he's actually Silent Bob. And I think what I decided, this is just me being armchair psychologist, is Dante was who he was afraid he was going to be. Randall's who he really wants to be, who he wishes he was, and Silent Bob is who he actually is. Pretty grounded, he's pretty chill with everyone, and he just is has a smart thing to say here and there. You know what I mean? And I thought that was kind of cool. And I think like you said, Nick, it's just what everyone wants to do, right? You write what you know when you're first starting to write stuff, and if you can get everyone together and you have your crazy coked out buddy that you just love with all your heart, which I think is beautiful. Their actual friendship, Jason Mewes and Kevin Smith, actual friendship is just beautiful to me. I've seen some of I was actually watching an interview that Jason Mewes did with Steve-O not too long ago, and he talks about how much Kevin Smith has helped him stay, get clean and try to stay clean and all that. It's really cool. I don't know. I just think it's really sweet, and it's just fun to start to watch these movies thinking about these sorts of things. And I think that's the thing I liked most about watching this movie again, was just picking up on that and just, I don't know, kind of getting that warm feeling in my heart,
A slight tangent. Just randomly, recently, KJ was going through an old hard drive, and he found a script that Tom and I wrote from, funny enough, this middle school period of time. So it was just kind of funny to see what we had done back then. And I was like, hey, maybe we should do this.
Yeah, it's the best part of the movie. I mean, this movie, upon revisiting, is rough. It's I know, I think it was selected for the National Register of the Historical Projects or whatever they call it, but it's a rough movie. What makes it admirable, I think, is this sort of balls out approach of its director and writer, right? Of just throwing every dollar and more dollars than you have at something, making it happen. I think he did work at that convenience store, and that's why the shutters don't open. They added that plot about the gum because they could only film at night because it was open during the day, so they had to explain why they couldn't have the window open.
Oh.
Yeah, so he
Which ends up being one of the best parts of the movie. That the constant, like, yes, I guess we're open. I assure you we're open. Like, I want that on
Yeah.
a T-shirt, like with that exact font and everything. Like, it's iconic.
It makes Dante's life that much more intolerable, right? Is that he has to admit to the world over and over and over again that he is operating this place that he hates, right? He can't just do it. He has to keep saying it again and again. But I think that is the best part of the movie, or the admirable thing about the movie, is just the making of it, just the putting that type of thing together, the sort of entrepreneurial spirit of it, which Kevin Smith has had a good career. I won't say I like his movies all that much, but he's
He made something big out
them.
of it. I mean,
Yeah, he's been very successful. He's also been very successful as kind of a stand-up, as successful as a sort of host for various venues.
Don't forget his comic book store. It literally had a TV show based off of
yeah, he seems to be a workhorse of sorts, and regardless of talent level, watching somebody just produce is an admirable thing. I think for my reading, Jay and Silent Bob are kind of like collectively the fool from whatever play you think, like King Lear or whatnot. All these courts had these jesters or these fools, and the idea with them is that they were so low that they could tell the king the truth, and even in kind of a jabbing or mocking way. And the idea is, if you got mad at the fool, there was something wrong with you for getting mad at somebody so low. And that's how I think of them. Like, they're able at the end to kind of tell Dante the truth, and he's able to actually accept it because of in this food chain at this whatever, this grocery store, this gas station, what have you, they are clearly the lowest of the low, right? They're the drug dealers outside, and they're in the end the only people who can actually say the truth. Randall can too, to a degree.
At the end of round one, Tom and Ben are tied with 2 points each, and Tyler is not far behind with 1.
No.
We'll be right back for round 2 after this brief message from one of our valued sponsors.
Hello,
and
welcome
back to
B-Side.
Finally, it is B-Side.
Today we're going to be talking about Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
We're going to be discussing the famous W.F. Murnau film from 1927, Sunrise. The Icelandic movie from 2015, Rams.
Juzo Itami's 1985 picture, Tampopo.
And today I'm going to be talking about a good old film that we just covered, and this is 1984's Ghostbusters.
Talking Pictures Trivia B-Side, wherever you listen to Talking Pictures Trivia.
And we're back. We're at the critical point of our episode where we ask the guests a key question. If you could write your own sequel for Clerks, what would be the plot? Who would like to go first?
So when I saw this, I thought it would be fun to, I don't know how far in the future, it doesn't really matter, but Dante, in order to grow up and win the heart of whichever woman it is that's in his life at this point, he buys the convenience store and he buys the video store, and now Randall works from him. And so now we have to watch Dante try to deal with all these people that were his peers, and now he has to try and manage them, and he has to deal with Jay and Silent Bob outside. I think that would be really fun. I think it would also be really fun if somehow Randall got involved dealing with Jay to some degree, and Dante had to deal with that, and maybe there was some sort of criminal element. But that would be my pitch, and I actually do really want to see that movie. So if Kevin, if you're listening, Let's do this.
Make it happen.
I wonder how big of a time jump, how far forward it'd be. Because it'd be
It's-
funny if they were like really older and they were still stuck in that same location.
Totally.
It sounds like a combination of Breaking Bad and Clerks.
Right.
That would be fun.
Breaking Clerks.
Breaking Clerks.
I like that.
Or
Great.
Clerking Bad.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's better. There we go.
Actually, that one fits. Yeah.
There it is. I mean, honestly, I just kind of want to see Tyler's, but my first thought with this is like, I know we have a Clerks sequel, but I kind of wish this had just been able to stand on its own. I think it's such an interesting story. I wish it could have just like been like that, but I'm curious to see like what a day in the life is like at the movie store. Like, just like, let's go hang out with Randall and see what that's like. I know he's like, our central character here is Dante, and I get that, but I'm kind of curious to see what that's like. And even just like flipping the script, like let's have like Silent Bob and Jay run it. Like I want to see Silent Bob at the convenience store, like not talking to people as they're like asking him questions. And I want to see Jay giving whatever movie recommendations he could get to people coming in. Like, what should I watch? Like, oh my God, let me tell you. It's like just kind of going after it. I think that'd be a lot of fun. But yeah, I don't know. Overall, I just kind of want to see Tyler's.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate that. It's a nice vote of confidence. I like the idea of Dante and Randall have to go do something. Like we see them go do other things, and they close down the store in the meantime. They go to a wake and they go play hockey and whatnot. But I do like the idea of like they got to be gone. They got to drive to like Vermont or something. They're not going to be back in time, so they have to have Jay and Silent Bob man the store. I think that's a good idea.
They go find his boss.
See, my movie would just be them hiring a guy to try to fix the windows outside, and he just can't get that gum out. You know what I mean? It's a sad film, but it tries all different types of tools.
Sounds very experimental.
Yes, yes. Oh, there'll be a lot of crazy angles, and yeah, it's gonna be deep.
I would like a post-apocalyptic movie where they're still doing the exact same things they're doing in spite of the fact that the world has ended. That for whatever reason, they're so on this track that it just does not matter that there isn't a United States or a New Jersey anymore.
It's an unsinkable ship, this life of they built for themselves.
There's just no meaning in their life anyway. So they just keep going to work.
I just smashed Mad Max and this movie together. And it's funny because you'll have these bloodthirsty people, but they ignore this one structure and these people.
Yeah.
It's just too boring. Who would...
My brain went to Shaun of the Dead and that opening sequence where he walks to the convenience store to like get the cornetto and stuff. It's like, yeah, what is that guy's day like in the convenience store? It's like, zombies coming in and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. These are all a lot of fun.
Well, and when you ask that question, like, what's that guy's day like? The real answer to this question is Jay and Silent Bob, like, and their movies. Like the real answer, like Clerks 2 shouldn't have happened. I mean, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But like the real answer to this is like, if those movies, Jay and Silent Bob movies, didn't exist, like that's what you want to see, because that's all you can think watching this is like, what do these two do all day? Like you kind of know, but like I found, even though I know, I still want to just hang out with those guys more than Dante and Randall because they're just so off the wall.
Hey, did you see Silent Bob rocking out? I mean, he's got some moves.
Oh yeah,
He does indeed.
Yeah, who'd want to hang out?
Move.
Who'd want to hang out with Dante?
Nobody.
Oh my God, seriously?
Dante doesn't
What a
even want to
bummer.
hang out with Dante.
Yeah. What a whiny fellow he is.
Yeah.
I think he's the whiniest person we've covered on Talking Pictures Trivia.
By design, though. By design in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched this with my
Right.
girlfriend. It's like he should never leave her because she sat on the floor of a convenience store. Like, if that doesn't show you that someone loves you, I don't know what does. Like,
Yeah.
that's a really good point because that floor is probably super disgusting.
It's time for question 3.
What is the correct response to Chewbacca?
What? I don't know.
Oh man.
I'm
Something.
disappointed in myself.
What is the correct response to someone yelling Chewbacca?
Hey, these are 2-point questions, okay? We had to move it up a notch.
Apparently, Jesus.
I'm gonna lock something in. I think I know it, but it's a sketch, if anything.
I'm not gonna get it, so I'll just say something. I'm locked in.
Yeah, I'm locked in with like no, I wrote a question mark.
Okay. It's either going to be amazing or a total dud. Tyler, start it up.
Well, I couldn't even think of anything like funny or witty or anything to say at all. So I've got nothing. I'm in a blanket. I'm phoning it in. I'm putting a big question mark. I know it's disappointing. I hate to do
It
this
could
to
be a
you,
bad
but
question design too, but it's what it is.
no, it's a 2-point question. This is where it gets real.
Okay.
This is reality.
I'm going to move on to Ben.
I mean, I was just gonna say, like, you make the Chewbacca noise. Like, I can hear.
Wait. Can you make the noise?
I cannot. I've not had enough to drink to do that. So.
Can you try to make any noise?
KJ, will you insert the Chewbacca sound right here, please?
Thank you, KJ. I remember it's something like, "That's my Wookiee," or "He's a Wookiee." Something Wookiee. Because I remember it's on the soundtrack, right? It's one of the songs on the soundtrack, and I remember them yelling Wookiee. That's a Wookiee. That's my.
Yeah, I can hear them like yelling Chewbacca
Yeah.
song, but I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. The point is going to go to Ben.
Yeah.
Your best
Okay.
Wookiee scream.
Perfect.
Ah, very good.
I was hoping someone would get it and do that.
Man, that's what I was gonna guess.
Because he goes, Chewbacca, he makes his noise, and then there is "What a Wookiee," and there's a few different lyrics, but it's always after they say Chewbacca, he roars in his Wookiee greatness.
Nice.
The reason I brought that one up is I that's again around where they're doing Star Wars. That song always jumped out at me in this film, so I had to address that. But the real reason for that is let's talk about the references that come up in this film.
You think about this came out in '94. Like, I think now we talked about showing this to 8th graders now. It's like, oh yeah, they're talking about Star Wars. Like, yeah, but there weren't movies talking about Star Wars in '94. Like, it definitely was not cool then to be like a nerd in the '90s. It's a lot different than a nerd in the 2020s. It's just like, oh, I love Marvel and Star Wars. Like, yeah, everybody loves it now, but back then, I think
D&D was cool back then, right?
Yeah, he was super cool. All the ladies with all this, but I mean, it's also interesting. That's
mainstream now, mainstream.
Financed all this is selling his comic books and stuff. So there are so many references in here. When we talked about it earlier, I love that conversation of like the independent contractors and the guy that comes in. He's like, I wouldn't take that job. So it was really cool. It was fun to see that stuff, and we get so much of it now, but it's cool to think of it back then in '94.
I think Kevin Smith was not directly, but indirectly the person that introduced me to the idea of a reference, right? Like, I had a friend tell me about I think it's in Mallrats, where he's talking about if Superman actually did impregnate Lois Lane and it would kill her. Is that Mallrats?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we talked about that. We talked about the Star Wars thing. Like, I had a friend that had seen all these movies, and he told me about all this, and that was the first time that I remember thinking about references in that way. And you're right, Ben. It's like, other than, I mean, after this, we get, or around the same time, I guess, we get Tarantino starting to do it. Like, I guess it kind of became the thing, right? Because now we're finally to a point where people that grew up watching movies are starting to make movies. I mean, I'm sure that had happened before, but it's just to the point now where it's more accessible, and it's just easier for people who grew up in the 70s and 80s watching movies. They're coming to their own and starting to make their own stuff. So it totally makes sense that people that love this medium so much would write it into their movies. But this was the first intellectual properties that made me think about referencing. And it's fun that it's like you can reference Clerks and also reference Star Wars at the same time. I just think that's kind of fun. It's like meta referencing, right?
Along those lines, when Tom and I were briefly talking about our first impressions of this film last week, this movie, the first time I saw it was at Tom's house. So when he's talking about in middle school, and this was the first movie where I realized there are other films that are not seen in the movie theater and take that approach. So I had the same kind of feel, Tyler, in my history of experiencing films. That was my foray into, and that's why my word was indie, independent, not indie Dr. Jones. But that reference, okay. But that was really, that was really my intro into something that was different for movies.
Yeah, for me, it was just like, that's the first time I thought about it. I was like, oh, like movies are a thing that are important and talked about, and that like kind of matter more than just like the entertainment on your screen. Like that was something that I had internalized, but it's the first time I really thought about those things.
Yeah, there is a postmodern element to it in the sense that what you start to see with something like Pulp Fiction, you see it more with Tarantino than this, but you see it a little bit with this as well, is that movies become so referential that they're sort of in part about the references they're making. I don't know if you have an opportunity before the 90s to do that. There might just not be enough cinema history. You see it a little bit with some things where they're referencing shows or musicals or things like that. I could think of Herbert Ross's Pennies from Heaven from the early 80s did something like this. But with especially with Pulp Fiction, like there's so many, and Tarantino's work generally, there's so many references to other things that quoting becomes part of the property itself. It becomes sort of the main aspect of the property, even more than what's originally put there. Is how do you recombine things? And the idea of people not doing anything, sort of in a state of stasis, but talking about very exciting things that happen in movies. It both excites us because, you know, we've been in those conversations where we talk about Star Wars in some intelligent or maybe some not so intelligent ways. But it also, the fact that they are, while not doing anything with their lives, constantly referencing movies, which are, you know, movies are all about kind of dramatic conflict and huge events and things like that. It also makes the conversation that they're having, uh, it makes the context they're having it more clear, in the sense that they themselves are not doing anything with their lives, right? They're kind of stuck talking about these big fantastical events lived by fictitious characters. It's like there's like a Samuel Beckett thing to it.
I never really thought about this, but now that we're talking about this time period opening up this idea of references really becoming more apparent in films. Another film that we discussed earlier this season was Scream, and you want to talk about I don't want to say self-referential, but referencing a genre. I mean, that's a few years after this, but it really exploded. And I wonder if we really examined it, if this mid 90s is really where this movie referencing really blew up.
Yeah, it seems like there was proof of concept. So it's like, oh, this is something we can do, right?
Yeah, it's the pop culture kind of really seems to have like started whatever in the 70s, 80s that, you know, they're able to reference that in the 90s. And so that's why I think we get that. One thing I just wanted to say is I also love how this has come full circle, because in Captain Marvel, the Stanley cameo is him reading his script for Mallrats, which I think is really kind of cool that they did that. I watched like Kevin Smith's review of it, and he said he started crying because he didn't know it was in there. It's like, oh, it's kind of cool that like this dude who, you know, put 30 grand in debt to start this movie in 94 and now gets to see his stuff kind of reflected in one of his favorite like comic universes. So I just thought it was rad
cool.
that they brought it back around for him.
That's awesome.
Stuff warms my cold old heart. Love hearing that kind of stuff. Also, Tom, something you said, like let's use the Star Wars reference as an example. It's a pretty clever trick for someone on a budget to make the movie feel bigger than it is, right? Because once you introduce Star Wars into the conversation in the movie, like you said, your brain goes to that big movie and the grand scale of that movie. So it's like, in some ways, it almost makes it's like you cheated and you stole some of Star Wars gravitas and put it in your movie, but in a way that works, right? Because everyone can relate to having those types of conversations, and it didn't cost you anything. It's pretty clever.
It is, and it also, I think, for me, it also reflects on the fact that, or it makes it more clear that these people are stuck. They're not doing anything.
Right.
because Star Wars is so fantastical. I mean, it's like Wagner squared, right? It's the biggest story in cinema. And for these people to be talking about that kind of just reveals how unmoving they are. If you ever read like
Right.
Samuel Beckett plays, I don't, if like Waiting for Godot or things like that, it's people having conversations like this, but not doing anything, right? They're supposed to go somewhere and they decide not to and just and just talk. And that has that kind of feel. And I think the kind of Star Wars thing is it's really fun and we've all done it, but we're also not working in as clerks in convenience stores. And there's also another element to it. I mean, the rental store is a haven. Not the rental store that Randall works at, but the other rental store they go to.
The good movie rental
store. Store.
Not a crappy one like the one I work in.
That is an escape. But I mean, escape has two elements to it, right? Which is like, it's an escape. It's a little bit of freedom from your life and the drudgery of your life. But it also means you have a kind of bland life that you have to escape from. There's a positive and negative to it that comes up through the video store.
It's simultaneously the thing holding them back, right? Like rather than going out and doing something, they're just sitting there talking about a movie. They're worrying about the independent contractors of a fictitious spaceship. You know what I mean?
Who isn't though, Tyler? Who isn't really worried about that?
I mean, I don't know. Those people signed a contract. They knew what they were getting themselves into.
Are you saying they knew the risks inherent with the job?
I mean, when your boss is Darth Vader, yeah, I think you kind of have some idea.
It's time for question 4.
How many title cards are displayed in Clerks?
Oh no. I knew there was going to be a title card question. I knew it.
Locked in.
I don't know. Let's say I'm locked in.
Smart move. Lock in first, so the other people get to sweat it out.
Okay, I'm locked in. I have a number. Are we doing Prices Right rules, or
yes?
Have to hit
and if this changes your number, Tyler, you can update it now. But it's the closest without going over. Okay.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, I feel good about my.
That changes everything. Tom, start us up.
I had 11.
Okay, Tyler.
I said 12.
Where do you fit in this equation, Ben?
Price is Right rules, but the opposite. I'm going 10.
So Tyler is going to get the points. There were 18 different scenes with 18 different title cards.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So, oh no, unfortunately it still wasn't enough, Tyler. Ben is still going to take down the episode.
Very good.
But no, it was a solid effort there at the end. I of course wanted to bring this one up. We've been talking a lot about this movie, the humor, the characters, the references, but how can we forget the style and the structure? This was one of the first movies that I saw in black and white that wasn't an old movie. So let's talk a little bit about the limited scenes, limited locations, the general style, anything that really jumped out about how he did this. And of course, we know he did it on an extreme budget, but still made it work, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, just to speak to my experience that I mentioned earlier with Tyler, we kind of did something similar. We didn't, film for 20 days or whatever. It's just one night, but we were lucky enough to have a diner close a little early for us. And then we got it for until 2 a.m. or something. So we had to film everything in one night, it was a lot of fun, but it does present the challenges of you have one location, but I think that's where you can thrive, like he does in Clerks, where it's all just in this one spot. I mean, the furthest away we get is the roof, that's
well, don't forget the funeral parlor very quickly.
That's true. Yeah, very, very quickly. We do get that. So I enjoyed it. I really liked the black and white aspect of it. I just think it's really smart because it was just because it saved on post-production costs because of the lighting and stuff like that. It's if we just do everything in black and white, there's a lot less to match up later. And as someone who's done editing, I totally get that. That makes complete sense that you would do that. So I love what he did. Just it's, for me, it's the whole idea of you're presented such limited options. What can you do with it? You make Clerks. And I think it's awesome.
Totally. And I think it's interesting watching it too. Like his dialogue is so specific, right? I think that's a big complaint a lot of people have with his movies is it's really hard to do his dialogue and make it sound believable. Like every one of this movie sounds like they're just reading off the script, right? But I also think that's kind of fun because I think the best part of this movie is listening to Kevin Smith's dialogue. I love like Tom you mentioned he does a lot of speaking engagements and stuff and I love watching those things. Like he's a really great storyteller. And so to me it didn't matter that they couldn't really pull off the dialogue because it's just kind of like listening to Kevin Smith read a speech or someone. I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is it didn't bother me that they were terrible at
At
they're
acting.
terrible actors. Yeah.
But they were his
Like,
friends, right? Like they were
right, it adds to the charm of
classically
it.
trained.
Right. It's like it's a testament to like how fun this movie is because like this should be a no watch. Like this should be terrible. Like if you just like, oh yeah, some dude in New Jersey like got his stoner buddies together and made a movie for 27 grand, you'd be like, oh great, I'll never watch that. But this movie's really fun and like it's kind of a miracle that it worked because I'm sure there was other people doing this. I mean, I'm sure there was other submissions to Sundance that year that were equally low budget. I mean, I have no idea really, but I don't know. I just think the movie's really charming, and I think all the limitations, both skill level and availability of um, material and filming locations, I think it really just kind of all comes together in this beautiful little stew that's just kind of fun to chew on for a while. I don't know. It works for me.
I know I'm probably not the only one to feel this way when I share my theory or my thoughts, even growing up of the black and white. Of course, we know it was for budgetary reasons, but I always felt it was like us watching them through the security camera, like security camera
Oh, okay.
footage. That's how I
Yeah.
always
I like that
interpreted
idea,
it.
yeah.
Like we're now again, it's not specifically a camera. They do move and have different angles, but it's like us seeing what you would see if you were watching that tape. And that's kind of how I always justified that style. And that's how it felt right to me. I don't know if you guys agree or even think that's a cool interpretation.
No, I think it works, and I mean, another complaint of Kevin Smith is that he doesn't do much with the camera, and so if he were to use that as an explanation, at least it would, it would validate the reason he doesn't ever move the damn camera. We know why he doesn't. Like he just doesn't have the budget or the time or even maybe the skill level to do it. That wasn't his concern. His concern was telling the story, but
he's got me on PR, Get that out there. How many years later,
I love it.
Yeah, the limitations kind of breed creativity. They always have. So when you like constrain someone, they tend to be able to do their best work. It's probably why this is, I think, his best movie, right? Have we all seen a number of other Kevin Smith movies?
It's been a while. I mean, I enjoyed them at the time, some of them, but again, it was just continuing a saga, like because Jay and Silent Bob would always have a role, be like, oh yeah, those are the guys, but I don't think any of them really jumped out of me, but I haven't seen them in ages.
Yeah, they're not quite as good. Apparently the Walrus film wasn't bad, but which is definitely not a Jay and Silent Bob movie, but they just feel a lot lazier than this. And I think it's just the fact that he was forced to work within constraints kind of disciplined him a lot. I mean, I know the funeral parlor scene was originally written and they couldn't do it because they just didn't have the money or the time to do that. So we see this always with artists, right? Once the handcuffs are put on, they end up creating a lot better. Once they have no constraint and they feel they're geniuses and they could just do whatever they want, we get some kind of like Fellini's Roma or one of these movies where you're like, or not Roma, Satricon. If anybody's seen Fellini's Satricon, it's like a 3-hour Technicolor gay epic that I don't think makes a lick of sense, and it's kind of hard to watch, but for a number of reasons. But this is, for all the constraints and for the fact that he can't, move the camera or do anything really interesting with it, kind of forces him to do a bunch of like little scenes like this, sort of break it up using the title cards, which sometimes works, sometimes is a little, like the lament title card is a little much that he's complaining about his girlfriend. I thought the one title card that made me really laugh was Harbinger. Do you remember that one?
What was it before?
Oh, I remember. I said 11 because that's the amount I remembered. But Harbinger was the title card that came on just before the old guy comes in to go to the bathroom.
Okay.
So in
Hey,
retrospect,
Sonny.
yeah, in retrospect, after seeing the movie, like actually that's pretty funny that they called that scene Harbinger. But yeah, I think it is a testament to restriction as being helpful in great works, and also collaboration, like how important collaboration is for things like this.
I agree with that 100%, and that's why I chose Sundance, because I feel like this movie really represents what you can do.
That makes sense. Yeah. And it goes back to, Ben, what you were saying earlier, where Kevin Smith probably had a lifetime to craft this film. And then a big studio is like, oh yeah, here's a big budget and a crew and this, and do your wit and make it work. And,
he literally just went to a building bigger than a convenience store. He's like, what's similar to, but bigger than a convenience store? Oh, I've got just the place.
Yeah. It's also the same kind of thing, though. Like, I also remember in 8th grade hanging out at the mall. Like, no intention of buying anything.
I definitely saw mall, like back in the day, I definitely saw Mallrats on multiple viewings and did enjoy it. I don't know what I would think about a watch now. I really don't. Maybe one day I'll find out.
Part of that same kind of like post-grunge going into Hot Topic thing,
They at least got a good actor to join the crew. Well, a couple of them actually, but
That's true. That's true.
Yeah,
That's my first experience with Michael Rooker, I think, is Mallrats.
yeah.
But yeah,
he was in that.
Tyler and I will be back for the Mallrats. We'll just do all the Kevin Smith movies with you guys.
I think there's a brief cameo by Matt Damon before it wouldn't count as a cameo because nobody knew who he was.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I'm not sure.
He's in the band or something, right?
Yeah, he's in like a back room or something like that. There's just there's a sliver of Damon right there.
It's a great band name.
Yes,
Sliver of Damon.
It's time for Movie Rent.
I thought you guys might want to know what the bonus question would have been if we went to extra innings.
Go for it.
So, a roofer listens to his heart and not his wallet. What was the name of this roofer's company?
Oh God, I have no idea.
3-pointer it would have been.
Wow.
It's a deep
Yeah.
cut.
I remember Baby-Faced Bambino was the gangster, but I don't remember the roofer company. What was it called?
It was Done and Ready Home Improvements.
Oh,
Nice.
I did not know that for many, many years.
Very good.
And sometimes you gotta break up a tie, but okay.
One of the things from the trivia that I like the most out of here is that Jason Reitman told Kevin Smith that this movie is what made him want to be a director. And Kevin Smith was like, "You're the son of Ivan Reitman. You directed Ghostbusters and Stripes, and I'm the one that made you want to be a director." Like, I just love that so much. And then just to kind of echo something Tyler had mentioned earlier, Kevin Smith, as I think we've established, is a really good storyteller. And if anyone has the time, go find his story about getting hired by Prince to shoot a documentary. It is just I don't know. I love it so much. I've watched it a few times. It's definitely worth it.
I gotta look that up after the show.
It is so good.
It's so good. It's better than this movie.
Yeah. His story about meeting John Peters. Did you ever hear that one?
I don't think so.
Where he's going to hire John Peters, where John Peters is going to hire him to write a script for Superman.
Oh,
man.
Wait,
yes.
And he's like, he wants him to get rid of the costume.
That one is so good too.
That's another really funny story.
I like listening to Kevin Smith talk. He spins a yarn. It's good stuff.
Yeah,
I haven't done it recently, but back in the day, I definitely did listen to some of his. I don't know if we want to call them speeches, but whatever it is.
Yeah. Like stand-up comedy.
Is it though? But it's more of like him just talking, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit Mark Twain-esque. Mark Twain used to do something like that back back in the day, but when he was alive.
If my dad was Ivan Reitman, I might be more inspired by Kevin Smith because it is more accessible, right? Like you're like,
Mhm.
oh wait, I could make something like that. I can't make Ghostbusters, but I could make Clerks, right?
Yeah.
So in some ways it does make sense, but you would think that he would have been, influenced a little closer to home than Kevin Smith and Clerks.
Yeah, you also don't want to do exactly what your dad did, right?
True.
Like you always, that must be like a real burden to bear if your dad's like a Hollywood heavyweight and you want to go into that business.
Because everyone else is comparing you, whether you like it or not.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So I could see somebody trying to do like the gritty and the nasty to get out from under that shadow.
Totally.
I did have one other thing I wanted to bring up, especially since our guests today do not come from New Jersey like the rest of us.
True.
We always, like, I wasn't sure if we just had a Jersey bias because it was like one of ours made it big. Was there anything there, or you could appreciate it even if you weren't from the Garden State?
Which is New Jersey.
Right. I've always been all in, man. And a lot of it has to do with because, like I said, it sort of mirrored experiences I'd had, like places I'd worked and conversations I'd had. And also it was just like, we're from Utah. So like no one's from Utah. Like no one that you've ever heard of is from Utah.
Mhm.
And so everyone that we looked up to was from somewhere else. So that didn't really make a difference to me personally. And it was punk rock. It was cool. It was the thing you're not supposed to watch. It was,
Mhm.
it was all those cool things. So
Yeah, I feel like I subscribe to the Jason Reitman theory. It's like, oh, if this guy can do it, maybe I can do it too. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, another thing I was interested in too was Randall and the different world views of Randall and Dante. Because I think like Randall to me, like my word was responsibility, and Randall to me is somebody who, to a certain degree, accepts responsibility, but accepts it in this kind of bizarre way. In the fact that he's like, he doesn't blame anyone else for his circumstance, and he's perfectly happy with it. And Dante is just, his refrain is, I wasn't supposed to be here today, meaning somebody else is responsible for all my problems. And I liked Randall for that. I think Randall is like this, sort of the hero of the movie because he's the person who kind of can accept his station more than anyone else.
totally.
Yeah, which made him, kind of an admirable character compared to Dante, who, God, by the end of it, he's hard. He's kind of hard to stomach.
He's such a bummer.
I was going to say, from an actor perspective, I actually thought Randall delivered the lines the best in the film too. Like some of them were like literally I've never read on camera before, but I felt like he still was able to really drive that wit home.
Yeah, I agree. And I think his speech there at the end with, their conversation that they have, I think really hits home. And I agree. I think a lot of it is just like how well he's able to deliver it and we connect with them.
I had something I was going to say, and I'm hoping one of you says something that reminds me what it was. So I promise you it was worth it.
It was really going to tie the whole episode together.
Really great stuff, but
yeah,
because I did my movie rant too early in the episode. So I've got nothing
Threw you
to
off
say.
your pace.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, I was like, Randall is completely defiant to authority. We talked about this sometimes, like there's this, like the carnival, which is this sort of inverting of roles where, or the Saturnalia, this inverting of roles where the servants are in charge for a day or whatnot. And Randall is just, and then it goes back to normal afterwards. Randall is sort of just living in that life. He is sort of, he is in charge of his circumstance. He likes to kind of mock the customers, which is a sort of inversion of those roles. And I like how towards the beginning too, he says like, yeah, I like a hierarchy, especially when I'm in charge, which is, also, it's also like a very postmodern thing to say, to be like, hierarchy is great if I'm on top, and I'm just going to admit that and live in that reality.
Well, he's the king of his own kingdom, which is only the video store. This decrepit,
but he's
probably
not really.
failing.
I mean, it's like somebody.
No, he's working for somebody, but no one else is there.
Customers, and presumably you are beholden to the customers.
Not in his world.
Yeah, he just isn't, right? He's just kind of living this kind of carnivalesque existence. And and he's kind of okay with power structures simply because he's in charge in this brief moment. And actually, he doesn't seem to really care if it ever gets stripped away from him. Yeah, I think Randall is the spirit of this movie more than anyone else.
Yeah, he almost seems like he's just waiting for it to catch up to him and for him to be fired and cut loose. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of the vibe I got. He's like, I'm gonna do whatever I want, and I'm gonna say whatever I want, and I'm gonna get away with it for as long as I can. I don't care about this place at all. They pay me, I get to watch TV. So like maybe if I get in trouble and fired, I'll grow up. But until then, I'm gonna ride this gravy train.
Yeah.
He's probably the only one. Well, I don't want to say he's the only one that's truly content, but I guess he's the most content. I don't know. Then again, Jay and Silent Bob seem pretty content in their roles too.
Jay seems pretty chill. He's all right with where things are at.
Let me flip it. Dante's the only one who's not.
Right.
Veronica isn't either.
Well, she wants to improve herself, though. I shouldn't say, but she's actually making an effort to improve herself and actually try to improve Dante, which seems like not necessarily the best use of her resources or love or affection.
She should direct that elsewhere because it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And then what's her name is also trying to kind of move ahead. Caitlin Bree, right? She doesn't want to get married because she wants a career. So she also has this kind of ambition. It's odd though, because like ambition is just whenever ambition walks into that store, you could tell it doesn't belong there. Like
it's an outsider.
Yeah. Veronica like gets dumped despite transferring schools, and it just doesn't work out for her, right? She can't get this guy to cope, so she leaves. And it seems like the same with Caitlin. Caitlin walks in to this place. She has this ambition to do something and have a career, and she's gonna, sleep with this guy because he's easy. It seems like Dante is somebody she kind of walk. He's easy, yeah. She can walk all over him, so why not? And of course, what ends up happening to her is, she gets her life is ruined by trying to, come into this space. It's like the entire space is about non-movement. It's about not going anywhere with your life. And if you're going to walk into this store, and with the expectation that you can somehow drag something positive out of this store, it's just going to hurt you, right? And so the only people who belong there are either Dante, who seems to be blind to the fact, in part because he can't do anything with his life, he's completely static, or Randall, who's perfectly fine being static, and Jay and Silent Bob, who are sort of able to laugh at everything and make enough money to smoke weed and get laid, as they say at the end.
What else do you need?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, that's nowadays that sounds pretty good, honestly.
Sign me up.
So maybe it did age well, this film.
Yeah. I think that like all middle-aged people are trying to find their way into the store to slow things down.
I'd like to once again congratulate our winner of the week, Ben. Just when I thought Tyler was going to take it down, I realized math.
Math.
So,
yeah. Damn it, math.
Congrats, Ben.
The source of all the problems in my life.
Yeah. It's been since elementary school.
There you go. I don't want to carry the one. You can find more of our content wherever you listen to podcasts, on our YouTube channel, Twitter @Talking Studios, and our website, talkingpicturestrivia.com. We're extremely grateful to all those who subscribe, like, follow, and leave a review. Are you more of a Dante or a Randall? Let us know on Twitter, talkingpicturestrivia@gmail.com, or give us a call at 201-467-8679. Thanks again, Ben and Tyler, for joining us today. It was great having you on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. This was a blast. I'll be back for sure. We'll be back for Mallrats. But yeah, if you want to follow me, you can find me anywhere at Benny Burrito. I am part of a podcast where we cover A24 movies called 24 Minutes of A24. So you can find us anywhere online there. And then I have one with Tyler and our friend Matt, but I'm going to let Tyler do those plugs.
Yeah, so that podcast is 3 films and a podcast. The idea being we pick a theme and then we pick the three of us each pick a movie around that theme and we watch it and we discuss and then we'll do fun stuff like movie drafts and recasts and just random movies, watch parties, that sort of stuff. You can find us anywhere on social media at 3filmspod. Our website is 3filmspod.com. And if you need more of me, and Lord knows I wouldn't blame you, you can find me on the socials at Bob Chillin with an underscore at the end. Some lucky jerk has it without the underscore.
Oh no.
I know. But
At
that's
what
all right.
cost? At what cost, right?
Right. Yeah. Probably way too much. I'll just keep the underscore. I just wanted to say again, I really appreciate you guys coming on our show and allowing us to come on here. It's super fun, and I really like this format. It's real fun. I did way better on my last time on the show.
Oh.
Hopefully, next time I come back on, I'll be able to answer a question
Yes.
or two.
We appreciate you coming on the show and having us when we get to come on. I also recommend for 3 films, there is a recasting of Batman and Robin episode. Speaking of Batman fever that's going on right now, everybody's seeing this movie. If you want to use your Batman fever in a nostalgic Joel Schumacher, somewhat ravey kind of way, check out 3 films and a podcast, Batman and Robin recast.
I love it.
Yeah. Good episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm Tom. What's my Twitter again? I'm so bad at Twitter. I hate it so hard. Yeah, my Twitter is Thomas Lehman 15 at Twitter, as you can probably infer. You could also catch our Talking Pictures Trivia B-side, where we delve into the movies in a little more detail. And then we're going to have Ben on to talk about The Batman, the Matt Reeves film that just came out as of this recording. So check that out as well.
Very excited.
Can you also say that in the past tense? Because I don't remember if this
Oh,
one's
yeah, we don't
coming
know.
out before or after. You may remember Ben, or Ben just joined us for,
yes.
because I don't know the order.
Audience, we have no idea in what order these are being released. So thank you, Ben, for having come on our The Batman episode. It was a lot of fun.
I had a great time, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah,
I
some
hope you
great
have-
insights you had.
Not because I want this to happen to you, but I just hope you just have a terrible experience on that episode. And that's the only response that you have locked in. I don't actually want that to happen, but that's just too funny.
Yeah.
I can also be found on Twitter at The Nicknamed. Join us next time when we continue our discussion about movies that define directors, when we discuss Tom's recommendation from 1975, Nashville. Stay tuned for our first impressions of this film.
Ding, 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 ding. Hey.
Next week, we'll be discussing Nashville. Tom, how was your watch?
I saw this movie, I think, initially in 2005. I saw it with a professor that actually Pat has taken a few classes with. And I really loved it then. And I actually don't believe I've seen it since then. So it's been almost 20 years since I've seen this movie. And I had a great time. I think a better time than when I initially watched it. When I initially watched it, it was one of those doing shows and watching the movie at 1 a.m. and realizing it was almost 3 hours long and being really mad because I wanted to go to bed but couldn't because of this damn assignment. And so I don't think I really got much out of it in the first viewing, but I had a wonderful second viewing and third viewing this week. I love this movie. I think my favorite Altman film was McCabe and Mrs. Miller, and I think now after watching this is my favorite. I think there's literally not one scene in this that I didn't enjoy completely. Pat, how was your first view?
So yeah, as Tom mentioned, I took a bunch of classes with a professor in college who, and I think he loves Nashville, and he loves Altman in general. And I know he loves Nashville. So I've heard him talk about it, and I've seen, when I took a class with him, we watched Gosford Park, which is also Altman, and then I watched for that class I was going to write a paper on Altman, and I watched Prairie Home Companion, which is not very good. So I figured it's a bad idea to write a paper on a bad movie, so I didn't do it. That's the only experience I have with Altman. And yeah, kind of Nashville has just been a movie that I've known is out there, but I've never actually watched it. So like Tom, I went to go watch it, but like Tom in college, I was going to start it at 5 a.m. this morning and get up early to watch it. And then I saw how long it was and set my alarm clock for an hour earlier so I could finish it before the kids woke up. So yeah, it's a very long movie, but I agree with Tom. I really liked this movie. I agree. I don't think there was a single scene that I disliked. I really enjoyed the film. I had a lot of fun with it. Andy, what about you?
Well, I had not seen it before. And I don't think I was just checking, I don't think I've seen any other Robert Altman movies. So I'm definitely a novice in the Altman territory. And I would say that I didn't like this movie almost at all. And I didn't like it because I didn't think I was getting it. Like there was something that I was missing. So I'm looking forward to this discussion to fill in the reasons why I might enjoy it on the second viewing. But I mostly spent the movie wondering why they made it. But I'm excited for the discussion. Nick?
Similar to Andy, I think I'm more in his camp than I am Tom and Pat. This movie was just not made for me. I don't think it was necessarily a bad film. It's just not a film that really grabbed me. And I get, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more, that it's more about the scenes versus the characters that go in and out of the scenes. But it was just very long. And it probably didn't help that I'm not very big into country music too. So it just wasn't for me. I mean, and again, there's movies that I'll say like were horrible. I think I give them a lot of credit for weaving everything in and out and actually like orchestrating the whole thing. But it just was not a movie I would watch again. Let's just put it that way. And I think we're going to have a really fun episode next week, especially when there's varying viewpoints.